Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm here with the victorious top laner of FlyQuest, Mr. Bwipo himself, coming off a pretty arduous win. I would say a little bit back and forth, 2-1 victory. You got the dub. That's all that matters. I want to pop the question first off, what prompted the switch from the Renekton Gnar back and forth, the run back into the Sion? You kind of already talked about it a little bit with Emily, but I did want to talk about maybe the conversation prior to that between maybe game 2 and 3, because you guys ended up banning Renekton yourself, and it looked like you were from the jump, I'm gonna go Sion, we're gonna go Sion here, regardless what maybe not regardless of what Fake God picks, but if Fake God picks Gnar, we're gonna go Sion.
Just for the most part, we thought coming into the day, Renekton was going to be a priority pick, and I think it was. Shopify, Fake God likes playing Renekton. I like playing Renekton. This was actually my first loss on Renekton in the LCS. I have lost an international competition with Renekton this year, but I haven't lost an LCS with Renekton this year. So, yeah, it was just a really high priority pick, and I like Renekton a lot. I just thought after the 2 games, I didn't have much impact, and I felt like he was very comfortable just playing the Gnar and farming up, and I didn't feel like I could squeeze anything out of the Renekton unlike what I normally would. So I thought it was time for a change of direction. I had a discussion with the staff, and yeah, they trusted me to do my thing. Whether I was going to pick Sion or not wasn't a guarantee. I had other picks as well, but Sion has worked for us on stage, specifically into the Gnar, and I decided to run him back because I think he's pretty good. Yeah, I don't know. He's a pretty. Like I explained it on stage. It's pretty simple, right? He gets a lot of bonus health. You buy a Ramlin's Omen, which is percent crit damage reduction, right? 30% less crit damage. So even late game, which is usually his weakest part, like early and mid game, Sion is quite a strong champion actually. So early game fights around grubs, he's actually a pretty potent champion due to his passive. You can't really ignore it that early in the game. And his ultimate is like pretty much a one-shot CC chain if you land it. So you usually force flash out of immobile champions. And in the jungle, a lot of people like playing like, Talia, Lilia, Zyra, Brand. And while Lilia isn't exactly immobile because of her movement speed, the others definitely are. And if you are coming in with your ultimate, they basically have to burn flash on the spot. And then they have the Sion they still need to kill. And then the corpse they need to not ignore. And I just think he's a pretty strong champion because that. Because he's not weak early. He's actually a pretty strong champion early in my book. And mid game has always been his strongest point because that's where his maximum health scales the hardest with the resistances and the limited percent armor penetration that there is in the game. So at that point, 2 items, no one really has percent armor pen yet or percent magic pen. So sounds like a huge tank. And thanks to the fact that most late game scaling teams are relying on crit chance right now, you buy Randuin's Omen and suddenly sounds a pretty mean pick. And I think most tanks follow this. I just think that like I said, I think he's just my comfort. I like Sion a lot. I've played him. Like, he's actually the champion I played in my first ever LEC split. I played him the most. I was playing finals against G2 and I picked it 3 times. So as a champion, I feel very comfortable on. I like using him.
Always like to pick your brain about the meta when we've had interviews before, and just your ideologies around champions and stuff like that. Do you think right now, because we're in this double AD carry meta, do you think like tanks aren't being picked up as much? You talked about Sion. You don't have to relinquish the secret sauce, but you can talk about maybe some other picks. Like, how come we're not seeing maybe stuff like Ornn, Malphite, maybe more traditional tanks that the casual LCS or League fan would be like, oh, they should be really good. They build Frozen Heart. They build armor. Like, could you maybe elaborate? Or maybe they should be picked and you're just maybe waiting for the right opportunity?
Yeah, basically Gnar is a bit of a bully in lane and a bit of a mid game bully. So if you fall behind too much on a tank, you may not want to pick a tank in an Gnar, and that's basically the conclusion. Same thing with Renekton. It can be difficult to navigate the laning phase against these champions, and as a result, it's just a matter of confidence, in my opinion. Ornn used to be played into Renekton, so I don't see why you can't today. And the same thing for Gnar into tanks, right? Like, why can't you play Gnar, like Ornn or Sion into Gnar? In the past, people did this. Now, basically, due to the grubs, if you end up giving 6 grubs away, a champion like Renekton or Gnar can more reliably take your top plates. And I think that's why people are shying away from these champions. Because if you mess up your early lane, you give up the grubs, and suddenly, you're not only down 20 CS, you might be down 3, 4, maybe even 5 plates in a whole tower. And then that is, in fact, a huge issue. So you need to be confident enough as a tank player to not losing your entire tower 1v1 basically. And I guess not many people are that confident in those matchups. Whereas, like I said, I'm very comfortable playing that as Sion, and I have no problem navigating that laning phase. And then, if you want to really make it easy, you can lane swap too.
Yeah, fair enough. Shifting over to maybe talking about prepping for Shopify and kind of how they like to warp the draft a lot. When playing against somebody like Insanity, right? Obviously, he's not your direct lane counterpart by any means, but you can tell that he gets a lot of agency in the draft. He gets a lot of, resources, we can call it. When FlyQuest is prepping for a team like that, now that we are in this best of 3 schedule and you only have to prep for one team, 2 questions here. A, do you think it's easier to prep for a team like that? Or is it harder because they could have more than just one cheese setup in a best of 3? Like, they brought out the Draven, he obviously had the Jhin. Like, were you expecting more from it? Like, how does that dichotomy work, right? Because a lot of people would say it's easier to prep for a team like that because there's 3 games to play. But then if they're smart, they'll prep more picks.
Yeah, so basically it depends on the power level of the player and the power level of a neutralizing pick. These are the 2 main factors I would look at. In Shopify's case, Corki is a fantastic neutralizer in the mid lane. He's being used worldwide as exactly that. You lock him in, he farms his creeps, he shows up with 2 items, and he's strong. He's nothing more, and he's definitely nothing less. And that's why you pick him, right? That's the idea behind Corki. He doesn't really participate in the game in a way that, like, Lucian would, where he shoves the wave, walks in river, tries to, play the game, fight everywhere he can. Corki's the opposite. He wants to farm anywhere he can. So that's strategy number 1. A strong meta pick like Azir, Corki in mid lane, and top lane that would be Ornn, Sion in the past, maybe Gangplank, Gnar. You're looking at these neutralizing picks. They exist in every role. Sejuani in the jungle is a good example. So, like, depending on where the crazy picks are, right? Like, there's always a champion that kind of just does its own thing, and they're robust enough that even if you cheese them, you can't actively progress the game. And there's nothing that outscales them so hard that they can't win. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's strategy number 1. And then strategy number 2 is, well, this guy, he has like, maybe 17 different cheese picks, but he's not that good, so I don't care. And then you just pick whatever you wanted to pick anyway, right?
Where does Insanity fall in between that spectrum, if you don't mind me asking?
Considering we picked Corki, I think we definitely didn't want to give him an angle he was too comfortable with. So I think he can be either. It depends on what you blind. But in this case, we definitely respected certain counter picks of his, at least the ones that we expected, and made sure that we picked the neutralizing pick instead.
Yeah, I want to harken back a little bit earlier. You mentioned about, like, squeezing the most out of certain matchups and squeezing the most out of maybe certain top laners that you play against, prepping into your coming into your prep work for Fake God specifically. Have you kind of always viewed him as a top laner that you could maybe squeeze a little bit more out of? I know he's not the strongest of top laners. You're somebody that's obviously competed against the best, or how does that kind of go into your mindset going into teams like this? Because obviously the prep for Thanatos and Impact is probably much different than Fake God and, someone else.
I think that he just plays the meta and he tries to be, as strong as possible on the meta picks. I think his laning phase is actually pretty solid. I think there's nothing, like, he doesn't make mistakes in the laning phase, and he won't push you to, like, he won't squeeze you for a mistake out of you, but he will punish you if you make a mistake. So I think he's improved significantly, actually, since 2022 when we used to play. I don't know what team he was on, but I remember he was in the LCS back then too. I think this year he's looked a lot better. Unfortunately, due to the strength of rosters and whatnot, it's not enough, and they struggle in mid game and late game. But I think that they've actually buckled down, and their early to mid game is very sound. Like, there's not much they do wrong, and basically, judging him, like, he's just a solid middle of the pack top laner. I think he doesn't do anything crazy that'll win you games, but he'll only be a liability if he gets put in positions where multiple people can pressure him simultaneously, or, like, basically, like, if he's left alone on weak side, you can probably abuse him, or like, for example, in the lane swap situation, he wasn't really sure how to figure it out. I think he played it fine. I actually don't think it was really his fault. That his Jhin ran out of mana and health, so I just walked in and I was just like, well, okay. Basically, I think once you start including multiple players into the game, that's when he struggles. And I think that's like a big reason why, up and coming top laners often struggle against the old guard, you know, like you have me, Impact. I don't know who else is there in LCS that's like old guard.
Licorice, maybe.
I mean, maybe, I guess, yeah, sure, why not? I don't know, they're not performing too well, so it's hard to make that point. But sure,
Fair
why not?
enough.
Basically, once you start including multiple people, what becomes their responsibility starts getting a bit like unclear, you know, because it's dynamic. Sometimes you need to be the one pushing side, and your team needs to come to you. Sometimes you need to go to the opposite side and defend. It becomes like very unclear. And if the enemy team has to micromanage that player because he's not sure, that's obviously less smooth than someone that knows exactly what they're doing and is reassuring people what's going on and how we're playing the mid game. So I definitely think that FlyQuest is that kind of player where by himself he holds his own. Once you start including 5 champions, like on 10 champions in the decision making, there's some mistakes being made.
Final question here, looking ahead. You guys have a real shot to end up in second place, right? There's a very real possibility. Your matchup against Cloud9, probably the second most hyped match of the season. I'm going to be quite honest. Obviously, the most hype was the TLC9 series that happened earlier today. What is your, mentality? What is FlyQuest? What is are you excited, obviously, to go up against Thanatos? What is this? What does this match mean for you? Because obviously, this is a team that you guys are very close in contention with each other. 2 and 3, you guys could be second and third, one of the other teams. What does this mean? And what would it mean to beat them, I guess?
I don't think it means that much. I think we're just, we have the least pressure out of the top 3 teams, like at least from public pressure and expectations. I think that's fair to say. C9 and TL are huge organizations in the LCS, and FlyQuest is trying to become that, but right now we're not. Right? We're not as big as those organizations, and I think that gives us an advantage because it allows us to be more comfortable, with defeat. If they lose to TL and then lose to us, that's a pretty heavy blow coming into playoffs when, we're their main competition. Whereas the other way around, we had a very close best of 3 against TL at the start of the split. We had one game that blew up. Same way TL kind of beat C9 the same way we did, where it's like, if the game is even and it's a stable game, it's clear that the teams are quite evenly matched. So preparation and making sure that the getting an advantage basically is going to be really meaningful. I think all 3 teams are quite volatile. Very explosive is a nicer way to say volatile nowadays. So I'll say explosive teams in the sense that you snap a finger and something booms. Whether it's that team or the enemy team, usually the enemy team, but sometimes mistakes happen, and I think that that's what makes it interesting. I feel like it's going to be a bloody series of games, and there's going to be fighting, and I'm looking forward to it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time, Bwipo. Do you have any message?
I also mentioned, as for the Thanatos part of the question, I don't care, man. I don't care. He's not bad, but he's absolutely not. He's nothing special. He lanes well. Basically, he's premium fake god. Better in lane. Maybe a slightly larger champion pool, but nothing more to it. That's how I see him. Maybe he team fights a bit better, maybe not. But when it comes to mid-game macro, it's obvious that his team has to micromanage him and tell him what to do, because when they don't, because they're under pressure, he's completely lost. That's how I see him. And maybe that changes. Maybe he starts getting good at mid-game, but right now I think he's just basically premium fake god.
That's the headline, premium fake god. I appreciate it, Bwipo. Any message to the fans, the haters even, that may be watching this?
Honestly, I appreciate everyone watching the LCS. I hope you enjoy the product. I'm always grateful for the fans supporting us at FlyQuest. And in general, for me, it's just important that people understand that making worlds is the goal. Obviously, we're aiming for a championship, and we're in a great position to contest for one. But at the end of the day, building starts small. You can't start with a skyscraper. You got to lay the bricks one by one, and I think we've done a really good job in spring, and we're continuing to put in hard work. I want to shout out Mithy. I think he's done a fantastic job working with our bot lane to make sure that they are improving significantly. Because I think that the hardest part about being a professional player is having confidence and knowing what your responsibility is. Because when you're in a team with multiple people, a lot of times rookies struggle with this. They struggle with being taught what you have to be confident about doing. And I think that's the same in every job. But I think, obviously, this is my field. So in my experience, that's what rookies struggle with, is when they're supposed to put their foot down and say, no, I'm fighting here, or no, I want to do this, or no, I want to do that, sharing their opinion. And I think I think we're working on that really well, and I think they're growing really well into that, and I'm really proud of them. They worked really hard. And a lot of people will think that's negative criticism. No, all rookies do it. I would have done the same if I didn't have experience playing in Turkey and Russia before I joined LEC. But that's what rookies are. You know, like they don't know exactly what their responsibility is supposed to be and how much space they're supposed to take in communication. And I think especially Alan Bulcio, he's done such a good job of, he's really gone above and beyond to make sure that he is a voice in the team. And he supports the communication really well. I just wanted to give a special props to him and Mithy for working really hard on that, and just keep doing us.
Thank you so much, Bwipo.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching the video. I'm hoping you guys enjoyed the content. If you did, leave a like, comment, do all that jazz. I genuinely try to respond to every single comment I see because it's always interesting to see the other opinions of people that care about League of Legends esports as much as I do. Obviously, the best way to support me is to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications on my latest uploads. If you want to see more of me and my content, I stream on Twitch 5 days a week. The link will be in the description box below. If you are into short form content, I'm also on TikTok. We talk about LPL, LCK, LEC, all the stuff over there. We talk about roster moves. So if your jam is short form content, head over to TikTok, hit the follow button there. I'm also on Twitter. So all of that stuff will be in the description box below. But other than that, thanks for watching the video, and I hope to see you soon.